clogged arteries, heart attacks, varicose veins. These are all symptoms of a malfunctioning circulatory system. And that is the human body system that we're going to explore in today's video so that we can later understand how those disorders occur. So before we dive into the circulatory system, remember that a system is composed of different organs working together, and different organs are composed of different tissues working together, and tissues are composed of different cells working together. And we're going to see examples of specialized cells, tissues, and organs within the circulatory system. So what is the point of the circulatory system? Well, in a word, it's all about transport. Just like the bus system in New Haven transports people. Now, why do we need a transport system? Well, let's first consider a single-celled organism like this paramecium. If you're single-celled, things are a lot simpler for you because you can simply exchange materials directly with the environment. Either through passive or active transport, materials come in, bam, and materials go out, bam. But if you're a multicellular organism, like this giraffe, things are more complicated. Materials come in and materials go out, but those materials have to get distributed to every cell in the organism's body. And so that's why multicellular organisms often have a circulatory system to transport all those materials from the environment to cells, and then take certain materials away from cells and get rid of them. And we're going to see in this video there are three main components of the circulatory system: blood, which flows throughout the whole body, the heart, and then the vessels through which the blood flows. Let's start with the blood. The blood is kind of like a bus. It's a vehicle that carries the materials, just like a bus carries people around. And blood is pretty complicated. Blood is a tissue composed of many different cells and fluids. Many people think blood is just a liquid, but it's not. There's a solid component to blood as well as a liquid component. Now, we call the liquid component of blood plasma. And plasma is really just water containing dissolved materials, like proteins and other nutrients, hormones, and wastes. Then the solid portion of the blood is the cells. There are red blood cells here that carry oxygen. There are white blood cells, shown here, that are defensive cells. And then there are platelets, shown here, which are really cell fragments, and they help clot wounds if you get a cut to prevent you from bleeding to death. Now let's take a look at the heart. If the bus is like the blood carrying things around, the heart is like the engine that makes the blood move. It pumps the blood throughout the body. And humans have a very special design to their heart. If you look at the human heart, there are 4 different parts or rooms or chambers to the heart. And that's an important adaptation that occurred in terms of evolution. The reason why this is an important adaptation is that it helps separate oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. Now, in diagrams, oxygenated blood is often indicated by a red color, and deoxygenated blood is often indicated by a blue color. This is a little bit misleading, though. None of your blood is actually blue. If it's deoxygenated, it's more of a dark purplish red, whereas oxygenated is a bright red. So just keep that in mind. Now, the different chambers in the heart have different names. The 2 chambers at the bottom are known as ventricles. To help remember this, I think about how they form the V part of the heart, V for ventricle. And if you look at the ventricles, you'll notice that they have very thick walls. These walls are muscular, and that's important because the muscular ventricles have to pump blood away from the heart. In particular, the left ventricle is really muscular because its blood has to go pumped throughout the entire body. Meanwhile, the chambers at the top of the heart are known as the atria, singular atrium. And the job of the right and left atrium are to receive blood from the body. So as you can see here, the arrows show that blood comes into the atria and then moves to the ventricles, and the ventricles pump it out. You'll also notice something funny, which is that you're looking at the right side, but it's called the left, and vice versa. That's because diagrams of hearts are really flipped around. It's like the heart was pulled out of your body and flipped. So whenever you try to label a heart or distinguish the sides, keep in mind that it's always reverse of what you might think. Finally, we have valves. Valves are like little doors, and they open and close between the chambers of the heart. And valves are important because they prevent blood from flowing the wrong way, keeps everything moving in the right direction. All right, finally, let's look at the vessels of the heart. So if blood is like a bus carrying materials, and the heart is like an engine that makes the bus go, vessels are like the roads through which the blood travels. And there are a few different types of vessels in your body. One type is the artery. I think artery, A for away. Arteries carry blood away from the heart. And because of that, they are the thickest of all the vessels. And they have this thick layer of smooth muscle along with two other layers. The reason they're so big and thick is that they receive blood at high pressure coming out of the heart, and they have to be strong to withstand the pressure of the heart pumping. Now, the arteries will branch off into smaller arteries called arterioles, and those eventually branch off into a different type of vessel, the capillary. Unlike the artery, the capillary is very, very narrow and thin. It's only one cell thick, and that's because it actually exchanges materials with other cells. So it has to be thin so that materials can move in and out of the capillaries. Now, the capillaries eventually branch back into vessels called venules, which become larger vessels called veins. This is our third main type of vessel. And you can see that veins are also pretty big because they've got higher pressure blood flowing through them. They've got 3 layers, like the artery, and they also have valves, which we'll take a look at in just a moment. So to sum things up, arteries carry blood away from the heart, and they're the thickest vessel. Capillaries exchange materials with cells, and they're the thinnest. And veins carry blood back to the heart, and they're medium in terms of size, but they also have 3 layers. Let's quickly take a closer look at what's happening in the capillaries. Here you can see a capillary, and note that it's very narrow and there's only one cell making up the capillary wall. Materials like oxygen and nutrients are going to be in higher concentration in the blood, so they'll diffuse out of the capillaries and into nearby cells. Meanwhile, a waste product like carbon dioxide will be in higher concentration in the cells, so they will diffuse out of the cells and then into the capillaries. And as you can see, this is a real photo of a capillary. The capillaries are so narrow that red blood cells usually have to march through single file. There's only room for one at a time. And finally, a closer look at the veins. Veins have a tough job because they have to carry blood back to the heart, and oftentimes they have to oppose gravity. Think about blood in your feet or your legs that have to get back up to the heart. So they've got a couple adaptations to make that happen. For one thing, they have valves, just like the heart. These are doors that will open or close to prevent blood from dropping back down and going the wrong way. Veins are also surrounded by skeletal muscle, and what this muscle does is it squeezes the veins to push the blood back up. All right, and that concludes our tour of the circulatory system. This is a concept map that you may want to put down in your notes, but we'll also make a concept map in class tomorrow.